Hello everyone and welcome back to AudioMap. Today I'm going to be answering a question that I'm sure is on a lot of musicians' minds, and that is, should you wait for the new MacBook Pros to upgrade? Or should you just go ahead and pick up an M1 Mac today? Now the short answer is, it depends on what your workflow requires. Let's go over some of the details of the rumored redesigns, compare what we can expect from them and when to what you get from a current M1 Mac, and then try to nail down what you should do given your needs. 2021 will be a big year for the Mac. We're looking at a potential 14-inch and 16-inch MacBook Pro and new redesigned iMacs. We're expecting chips along the lines of M1X, M2, maybe even M2X or higher. The MacBook Pros will likely come with at least M1X variants, as well as possibly coming with mini LED displays, a new version of MagSafe, the return of the SD card reader, if you can believe it, and new flatter designs a la the iPad Pro, iPad Air, and iPhone 12. These MacBook Pros, as well as the new iMacs, may have anywhere from 8 to 16 high-performance cores compared to M1's 4 high-performance cores, and may have double or even triple the graphics cores, potentially doubling the graphics performance or better. The earliest we might see any of these fabled MacBook Pros or the new redesigned iMac is March, but most rumors seem to be placing them around June or even in the fall, so we may not see them for some time still. Now I think it's important to go over what the current M1 Macs give you right now. The fanless MacBook Air keeps up with the Pro and the Mac Mini in all but the most strenuous workloads, and those don't include music because Logic and other DAW's processing isn't constrained by heat. The basic idea is your DAW needs to have CPU overhead in order to handle changes in a session over time, to handle automation or new tracks coming in and out, etc., spikes. So when Logic's running a busy session, it could crash from a short spike in CPU, but not likely from a sustained load causing too much heat, particularly on these very efficient M1 processors. That heat just isn't being generated at sufficient rates of the CPU usage in your DAW. So for musicians, we can expect pretty identical performance between the three M1 Macs, all other things being equal. Okay, so Air is as good as Pro or Mini, typically, for most musicians. That being said, all three of these computers are essentially more performant than the current highest-end 8-core Intel MacBook Pro, the 16-inch. So, if you weren't planning on spending northwards of $2,400 for that computer, or maybe that's the computer you would have gotten prior to the M1 release, then the current M1 Macs will serve you perfectly well, even better than that machine would have. For starters, just for little to no fan noise while tracking or mixing, in addition to all the other quality of life benefits of the M1 Macs. So what does this mean? It means if your workload didn't require a particularly powerful iMac or Mac Pro before, then any M1 Mac will have more than enough overhead to cover you for years down the line. They seriously are that powerful. You may choose to wait for the MacBook Pros for more ports, but to be honest, 2 is plenty. One good USB-C hub or Thunderbolt hub, and you have more than enough I/O for any workflow. So I personally don't consider the more expensive machines worth purchasing for that reason alone. You may prefer an all-in-one desktop for your studio, in which case wait for the iMac. But if you have a keyboard and monitor already, the Mac Mini is a better value proposition and is available right now. Essentially, unless you know you need more power than these machines provide, perhaps you're running a particularly high-end studio, or maybe you track enormous sessions in 192K sample rates, whatever the case may be. If you're watching this video, you probably don't have such excessively performant needs out of your machine. Many of us are in home studios, or maybe even bedroom studios. We've been able to get by with 3 or sometimes even 6 to 7-year-old laptops. My personal recommendation for most musicians is to get a MacBook Air if you need portability, or a Mac Mini if you don't, and spend the savings to upgrade the RAM to 16 gigabytes, and you shouldn't go lower than 16 gigabytes, and to buy ample storage or a good SSD. Anything left over after that would be better spent on actual musical equipment, like good microphones, virtual or real instruments, maybe a new audio interface, etc. I don't generally recommend upgrading your gear before honing your skills, but if you were going to spend that money on a computer so much more powerful than you need for making music, it'd probably be better to spend it on better musical gear instead. The one caveat to any of these considerations is if you might need increased performance for some other use case in addition to music. Maybe you're also editing video of a particularly intense nature that requires greater graphics performance. Or maybe you're also a programmer that could benefit from greater CPU performance. That being said, this is a video focusing on upgrade considerations for musicians, so if this is you, research the requirements for your respective use case, and then buy based on the most intensive need that you have. If you want to check out the performance of Logic on the M1, be sure to check out my other videos. If you like this video, give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming content covering Apple Silicon Macs and various music tutorials. See you guys in the next one. Thanks.